when we capture that on QEEG measurements, and we're measuring between 19 and 35 different compartments in the brain, you see this very, very dramatic elevation in gamma brainwave patterns.
Hello and welcome to the Pacific Channel. I'm Steve Doherty. One of the things that Dr. Joe Dispenza teaches, and most law of attraction teachers teach, is that you attract whatever you think about, whether you want it or not. That explains why there are so many problems in the world today. For example, the more people shout no to war, the idea is the more the universe hears yes to war. And this is why Mother Teresa always said that she would never march against war, but she would march for peace. And this is why the more people that shout no to drugs, for example, the more drug problems are created. I know it sounds a little crazy, but that's the teaching. You get what you think about, whether you want it or not. Knowing that's how it works, in this audio, a lady asks Dr. Joe a compelling question. She explains that she recently got a job doing cancer research, but she worries that she might attract cancer since she is so focused on it in her job. Dr. Joe gives an excellent answer, which you will hear in a moment. Then in this same audio clip, another person asks Dr. Joe about autism and asks if he is doing any research on it. Let's listen to Dr. Joe answer these questions, and then I'll discuss it further with you when he's done.
And hi, everyone. This question comes from Lily. Hi, Dr. Joe. I recently started a job in cancer research. I was very excited about it and the prospect of helping others and gaining knowledge. However, I've become worried that I will spend my days constantly thinking about the disease and that I will bring it into my life or that of my loved ones. As a scientist that spends his time understanding and studying disease, could you tell me, is it possible to study these diseases and not get sick or bring illness into your life? And if so, how should I approach this with my thoughts and practices? Thank you.
Wow, what a unique and wonderful question to ask. First and foremost, thanks so much for doing cancer research. We really have to look at the disease in a much greater detail, and we're happy with what we're doing with some of the research we're doing. So please make sure you make an effort to reach out to us or talk to us when we start publishing our work. It's this kind of thing that is kind of characteristic to human beings, and we have this wonderful emotion called empathy. And empathy is what allows us to actually feel what another person is feeling. So when a person is feeling gratitude and they're expressing gratitude, and we've in some way contributed to their reason to feel grateful, we've given them something, the gratitude we receive is empathetic. We're sharing that person's experience. And when you do coherence healings in this work and you realize that you're part of somebody's change in their life, and you see them in an upgrade in their body, or they're walking out of their wheelchair or whatever, and you were part of that coherence healing, or our mother is talking about a change in her child, it's imperative for us to see that when we see that, we're actually feeling as much gratitude or more gratitude than that person. So we're naturally wired for empathy. The challenge and the problem comes when it has to do with people that we really love or that we care for, or we want to see do well in their lives, and they're faced with some disease or some challenge, and then we start feeling the emotions that that person is feeling in their own state of limitation. And without making or casting any judgment on that person, but if that person is not feeling well, it's very difficult for them to think greater than how they feel. And they stay stuck in a wheel there, in a pattern. And so in order for us to produce a change in that person's health, we have to be very conscious of our own thoughts and feelings. In other words, you can't heal that condition or help that person when you're feeling the way they're feeling. And it's feeling the way they're feeling when we empathize that causes us to begin to experience some of the things that they experience. It's not a very healthy thing to do. If you're going to heal that person, you have to go to a greater emotion or a greater energy, and that's the work. And that's why it's very difficult for people who have loved ones to help heal that person, because they can't get beyond the emotions and the attachment to the outcome long enough for them to help that person heal. So when we pull it off and we're successful, we've executed the divine. When we haven't, we're still on some level attached to our human self or our emotional self. And so when you're doing research, it's so important to remember and have a meaning and intention behind why you're doing that research. If you understand how cancer cells work, that's one thing. If you wonder if those cancer cells are doing that in your body, then that's a concern. You have to catch that thought and catch the feeling that's associated with it, the fear or whatever comes along with it. But if you have a meaning behind the research that you're doing, in other words, you're excited about a cure for cancer and you're genuinely interested in uncovering some mystery about the disease or condition, and you're looking from a different state, a different level of consciousness, your interest really is in discovering something. That's what research is about, and you're enthusiastic and you're inspired, and you understand the challenges that the cancer cell provokes for the human body. And it's more of a puzzle and a mystery, and you get up every day with the excitement of understanding it. I think you would have a different experience than worrying about if you could possibly get it. Now, that doesn't mean that a person who doesn't worry about cancer shouldn't get cancer. No, there's a lot of other factors that's involved in what starts cancer from spreading in the body. But let's just say, though, that the person who has the right attitude in doing research and stays above it, stays above the empathy that goes along with some of the effects that the disease has on the human body, I think it would be of great service. So it's no different than anything else. We have to constantly stay aware of how we're thinking and how we're feeling. And people who tend to be empathetic tend to feel what other people are feeling. So let's use it for our benefit in the proper ways. And let's overcome those emotions that are associated with our human selves so that we can measure really some of the effects of a change a person can have when they change the way they think and feel. So thank you for your research, and I think it's great that you asked the question.
I am actually here in Nashville. I actually live here. So we are really excited to have you here for the event. I have worked with children with autism for over 24 years. I'm a behavior analyst. And I was really interested in the research on the brain waves that you were doing in Cancun. And I was wondering if you knew of any research or doing any research on brainwaves in kids with autism, because I had a moment in Cancun where I was like shaking and all the energy was coming through my body, and it kind of triggered in me at the thought that, oh my goodness, this is what happens to kids with autism when they're doing what we call stimming or self-stimulatory behavior. So I was just curious if there was any plans to do research on that, because it'd be really interesting to see what their brainwaves are doing.
Yeah, so thanks, Brooke, for the question, and thanks for the work that you do. One of the things that I've looked at with autism is really how the nervous system and the brain actually function. Now, as you know, there's a whole spectrum, but let's just say for the autistic brain, there tends to be a very active frontal lobe, like an overactive frontal lobe. And if you read any of my work, the frontal lobe is like a volume control. Like if you're really paying attention and you don't want to be distracted by anything else but what you're present with, the frontal lobe actually has to act like a volume control, and lower the volume in the circuits in the brain that really have you become aware that you're local in space and time. So that's what allows us to make thought more real than anything else. And so it dampens down the sensory circuits where we feel our body, dampens down the circuits that produce the mind of motor function, of movement, our sense of self and non-self in space and time, quiets down all the sensory circuits as well, and they start to diminish. And of course, we move into that alpha, or that creative state. Well, that's how we actually learn. That's how we pay attention. That's how we create. There's so many important elements with executive function. Now, just imagine turning that way up, like turning it up, that you become so over-focused on something single-mindedly that you have no sense of your outer world, or you're diminishing your sensory information from your outer world. And some autistic brains, you see kind of this very active forebrain, so active that they can pay attention to something for extended periods of time, or there's a disruption in the environment that causes them to not be able to do that. And of course, there's outbursts and everything else that go along with it. Now, when people in this work have one of those brainstorms, one of those moments, so an awakening or a connection, whatever you want to call that, when we capture that on QEEG measurements, and we're measuring between 19 and 35 different compartments in the brain, you see this very, very dramatic elevation in gamma brainwave patterns. Really significant arousal. But very organized and very coherent. Now, for some people, and it's happened to me enough times, that's just not an energy that the nervous system is used to processing. And so it's got to accommodate for that increase in energy. And a lot of times that increase in energy is so intense for the nervous system that it causes the body to convulse or to move randomly or begin to move out of control. That's an enormous amount of energy that the nervous system has to process. And sometimes there's that kind of rush of energy, and we see not all the time, but a lot of times there's a pause, like there's a relaxation of the quiescence of the circuitry, then it goes back up again, or it builds to a greater frequency. So we see that sometimes as well. Now, when that occurs, there's some kind of, the autonomic nervous system somehow is connecting more richly to energy and frequency, and frequency carries information. So energy is informing matter on that level, and the person's feeling it in every single cell of their body, because your autonomic nervous system is connected to every system, cardiovascular, immune, digestive, every system, every organ, every tissue, every cell is touched by the autonomic nervous system. So imagine now it regulating to such order that that the cells are getting more energy. That's basically what's happening. That, and the more coherent the frequency in the nervous system, the more coherent the signal or the information to the cell. And many people have that experience, in a matter of moments they have an upgrade. Now, that doesn't happen every single time, an upgrade physically, but a lot of times there's this kind of convulsing that goes on in the body, or a loss of consciousness, because that's an enormous amount of energy that's going to the limbic brain, not to the thinking neocortex. And so a person moves into this kind of altered state, and we should never be afraid of that. And a lot of people have it in sometimes inappropriate moments. It's happened to me as well. Now, I don't know if the autistic child is having that kind of outburst or that loss of order from their connection to energy. We haven't studied that. But I would say that some spectrums of autism are genius. They're obviously accessing information. So, do we want to do studies on autism? Absolutely. Do we want to do studies on kids? Yeah, absolutely. Do we want to continue our studies on cancer? Absolutely. We're moving as fast as we can. But the SPECT studies, the single positron emission computer tomography studies that I've spent time looking at, as well as EEGs, really do show that kind of overactive forebrain. So hopefully we'll get to some research on autism soon, and thank you for your question.
So I'm going to focus on the first question in this audio clip, since Dr. Joe basically said that they haven't really done much research on autism, but that he wants to. So with the first question, Dr. Joe explains that one of the problems that we can get ourselves into when we want to help someone heal is showing too much empathy towards the person, especially if it's a relative or someone we are close to or someone we love. You may identify as an empath yourself, able to feel what other people feel to the point where you are equally affected emotionally and even physically. I know because that happened to me a couple of times, and one of the main times was when my dad was close to transitioning or dying back in 2008. I was taking care of him for years and very close to him, so naturally I empathized with his situation. But by doing that, by feeling everything he was going through, I attracted one of the most serious physical ailments that he had in the last 3 days of his life. I couldn't believe it. It was the exact same thing. It's an embarrassing topic, and I don't really want to mention it if you don't mind. At the time, I didn't have any health insurance. I couldn't go to a doctor, and if I had, I'm 100% sure that they would have wanted to do emergency surgery on me. It was so bad that I couldn't go meet my brothers at the Forest Lawn mortuary to pick out a coffin for my dad. I remember thinking to myself, okay, well, this could be it for me too. I guess I'll either die or heal. It's your choice, I told my body. I was already kind of into this stuff, so I was surprised that I had attracted this, right? The good news is that once I let my resistant thoughts go and just stopped worrying about it, my physical problem went away as fast as it came to me. The point is that when it comes to our loved ones, we may be too close to do much good, right? You may not be able to keep from caring too much like I did. But let's get back to the other point about working around something that is negative, like the subject of cancer. Will you attract cancer if you work in a cancer research facility? Dr. Joe said something very important, and that is that it's all about your attitude, right? You really have to be careful with your thoughts. If you worry about getting cancer because you are working around it, that's not a good place to be. That's not a good feeling to have, and you are more likely to attract it. But if you know that you can't get it unless you allow your vibration to lower, then you have no reason to worry about it. I know I'm getting off the subject here a little bit, but there's a book by Louise Hay called You Can Heal Your Life. And in it, somehow she connects many physical ailments like cancer with a negative thought that probably attracted it. So here's the book. It's called You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. And in it, she has like one column for the physical ailment that a person might experience, and another column for the probable cause. And then the third column is what you should think in order to alleviate the problem, right? Or to get relief from it. So, for example, with cancer, let me just read this real quick. For cancer, the probable cause is deep hurt, long-standing resentment, deep secret or grief eating away at the self, carrying hatreds. What's the use? So if you have a lot of hatred for people or for somebody in your past, and you can't let it go, it can cause cancer, according to this book, right? So I know that sounds kind of weird, but that's the point. That's what they're saying. So the new thought pattern that you would want to think for cancer in this example would be, I lovingly forgive and release all of the past. I choose to fill my world with joy. I love and approve of myself. So a lot of it is about letting go of the past, forgiving yourself, forgiving others, and just releasing all that negativity. So the point is that your body responds to your thoughts and will manifest illness if you think negative thoughts, and wellness if you think positive ones. So choose the good thoughts and you'll be fine. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, and share it with your friends and family. The world needs this information. So many people are unnecessarily suffering because they don't know about this stuff. And also, please leave a comment below about what you think about this video. Thanks for watching. Have a great one, and I'll see you in the next video.